to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joining me on this wonderful Wednesday evening. I had to think about what day it was because I don't know. It's just kind of all blurring together. When you get a little sick, it's like it's blurred together. But you don't have to worry about anything because you're not here. I can breathe.
The good Lord.
I can breathe on the mic all I want, and nothing will happen to you. That's always a good thing. Well, on today's show, we're just going to talk trade rumors and what's going on with some of these UFAs, some bigger names in the pile in the pool here, where they might be going. This is generally the time. I know we talk a lot about trade deadline, but there usually is one big move before Christmas. It's just kind of happens, and it's kind of one of those deadlines throughout the year that we get where there is a freeze. I think there's a technical freeze that comes, what is it, like the 20th of December or something like that, maybe a week before Christmas. But some teams have 2 weeks before Christmas. So like some of them just have their own internal, we're not going to be a dick and trade this guy right before Christmas kind of vibe. So this is the time when something could happen, really the next 2 weeks. And I'm going to give it to you. Where do you want to start with this conversation, Justin?
Boy, you want to talk trades, or you want to talk what's going on in the NHL first?
Well, yeah. Why don't we talk? I know. We wanted to hit on Connor Hellebuyck and that the helmet flying off, and the bigger conversation around that probably is just goalie safety.
Yeah.
Where do you lie with that? Because I know at this point now, it's about a week ago that it happened. Obviously, nothing has happened because there's a board of governors meeting, I think, coming in December, and then another GM meeting in the spring. But really, other than people kind of saying I didn't like that play, there hasn't been much from the league in terms of, hey, this is going to be our response to this.
Yeah, it's actually kind of shocking that there's literally been no conversation outside of that initial day after reaction. I mean, to be honest, it rarely ever happens where you see a goalie, his helmet's off and he's laying on the ground and the play still continues. I think refs are pretty good about it when the goaltender has their mask knocked off. And you'll see it all the time where a goaltender might take a shot to the mask and their helmet's loose. They know the strap came off, so they throw their helmet off with a quick head jerk and then refs blow it dead. In this case, Connor Hellebuyck kind of got ran over and was laying off to the side of the net, and they still let the play continue. And, for me, I think where I lie is obviously the goaltender is always going to be around the net, and that's where players are taking shots, right? And if you allow the play to continue, there's going to be it's only going to take once where a freak accident happens. Sure. And a play or a puck gets tipped by a player's skate or stick, and then it ends up hitting the goaltender in the side of the face, and the next thing you know, he's got broken jaw, and then
or worse,
worse.
You just don't know, or worse. And I think the hard thing to watch, if we play a scenario back where, a goalie is moving from side to side, his helmet comes off, and a player is taking a shot right at the same exact time, and that puck goes in, and the goalie's helmet happens to be off by the time that puck goes in, I'm okay with that. I don't think
absolutely.
that it needs to be the helmet goes off, and anything that happens after that, it stops. I think it's, hey, let them finish their scoring chance. I mean, the helmet comes off, you're in the middle of a shot. Maybe it hits the goalie or goes wide, what have you. But as soon as that shot is done, and maybe a subsequent quick rebound, it should be 3 to 4 seconds. It should not be very long where that can happen. It shouldn't be, the other team has possession, so... it's the same as when a player's just on the ice and can't get up, and you're watching a team pass the puck around, and you're like, come on. We have to care more about people than we do about the result of especially a regular season hockey game. I know 2 points can miss the playoffs, and one goal could be the difference of that. But frankly, it's still not. It's not worth somebody either getting hit with an errant puck, goaltender or otherwise, and it should just be an easy. We blow it dead. Yeah, you might go, oh, that freaking sucks. Well, that's lame, but it's just going to be one of those bad luck things. And how often every team across the league experiences a little bit of bad luck through the regular season. It just happens. guys get injured for weird reasons. A guy's a toe is slightly over the line and a goal gets called back. There's all sorts of bad luck plays that happen. And I think that this is one that I'm willing to say, yeah, go ahead. That's fine. Even if it's against my team, it'll piss me off in the moment. But once cooler heads are there, it's going to be very easy to go, well, yeah, of course, like we don't want that guy getting hit in the face and something long-term happen to him. That would just be terrible and a terrible look.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, listen, when players go down, right, other guys tend to pass the puck around him if they're still in the offensive zone and have control. But with a goaltender, he's typically in front of the net where he's going to be shot at. And to me, that's where I kind of draw the line and say, you know what, leave it to the refs, let them blow it dead, and
honestly,
let's worry about it later.
If a guy's down, and you're like, oh shoot, this guy's like bleeding bad.
Right.
Just like pass the puck to the guy on the other team and call it good. And whatever. Just say afterwards, I'm not going to let that guy lay there. It's not worth it.
Right.
And I
don't think any coach is going to get pissed off at you for doing that.
And someone that thinks that it is worth it, well, screw them. I don't want anything to do with them.
All right.
All right. Well, anything else that in terms of that, or anything else that's going on in the league that we want to hit on before we get to these rumors?
Yeah. I mean, obviously today, I don't know if any of our listeners, heard, but Cal Peterson put on waivers. That was a big, again, goaltender, right?
$15
always
million
where my mind is. Right. Yeah, I know. I mean, I know he's been playing rough this season. He didn't have a very good, his year last year was mediocre at best. LA has struggled to keep the puck out of the net. And, obviously Jonathan Quick, he's got the rings there and, the experience, but this guy's got, like you said, a ton of money left on him still, and they're just going to go ahead and put him on waivers. Now, I don't know specifically off the top of my head how much money that's going to save the team, or
it saves them what, $975,000 or $950,000.
Yeah, and you still got 2 more seasons after this of that, and I highly doubt any team is going to claim him at that price. Now, if he was maybe $2 or $3 million, yeah, I could see a team making a claim for a guy like Cal Peterson, who's once, projected to be your next starter, and he's only 28, so he's still got time to figure it out. But with guys like that, sometimes maybe you just need to get a kick in the ass and say, you know what, you're just not playing well. Well,
and I think that's really what's happening, is that they just don't feel like they can trust or play him, and so if someone is ballsy enough, I'll say, to pick him off of waivers, because there's a chance, you pick this guy up off of waivers and he turns his game around, and suddenly you've got a pretty darn good goaltender for decent money. I don't see it happening. I don't think anybody's going to do that, especially in the middle of the season. So I think LA, this is just they're sending him down. And they're probably going to start him quite a bit while he's down in the minors, hope that he can regain his composure, get his confidence back, get him playing. You don't want to have a guy playing every 5th game who you don't trust. So right. I think this is truly I'm actually surprised that they didn't send him down for a conditioning stint, which I would think the reason that they didn't is they know he's going to clear, probably because they've gone around and said, hey, anybody want this guy? And no, probably no. Yeah, sure. If you want to eat half his salary, and and also he's due like a $4 million signing bonus in the off season. A lot of teams don't want to pay that, so I think
his contract's backloaded.
Yep, $6 million in the final year of that deal. So I'm sure a lot of teams don't want to take it, and the Kings know he's going to go down. It'll save them a little bit of cap space, and they also. I think they sent a few other guys back down, Elias Anderson, and they're kind of figuring out what to do here, because they have, they're 4-3-3 in their last 10. I mean, in reality, that's 4-6 in your last 10, and that's not going to get it done. They're scoring goals. They're the highest scoring team now, not in a per game basis, but they are the highest scoring team in the Pacific as it stands right now. But they've also allowed the second most goals, only shy of Anaheim, who is just letting in every goal. But let's be honest here. The Seattle Kraken sent Cal Peterson to the minors. maybe his career was just ended by the Seattle Kraken, because Seattle Kraken scored 4 goals and 16 shots on him after they pulled Jonathan Quick in a 9-8 game on Tuesday night. I did not watch it other than highlights later. I wasn't watching it live. But I'm pretty sure that those 9 goals are definitely a record for the Seattle Kraken and for their organization, and a 17-goal game. I remember a couple 8-7 games, but a 9-8 game is pretty spectacular. So
yeah, that was something else to watch. I'll say for sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think LA's got to be looking at this like, well, we are in a playoff position, but Edmonton, it's 3 games in hand. Calgary's got 3 games in hand. Like, they are by no means a lock, and defensively they're going to have to figure this out, especially because Quick hasn't been very good, but that's probably more so because of what's happening in front of him, not necessarily the way that he's playing. And the Kings don't want to go backwards. You know that they don't want to go missing the playoffs after going out and acquiring Kevin Fiala and making that big move. I mean, that was it right there, and that's I imagine LA wants to continue taking steps forward and not going and missing the playoffs again. That would be bad.
That would be bad indeed.
Well, should we get to some of these rumors? Actually, one more thing we just want to toss out there. That Chris Letang, obviously, he had a stroke on Monday, which is, if you're wondering, haven't I heard that before? Yes, he did have a stroke in 2014. And apparently he's okay. He's optimistic he's going to be back on the ice soon. And it's the first time, actually really the second time, because he did this the first time in 2014. It's the first and second time that I've ever heard of somebody having a stroke and being like, no big deal. I'll be back at work in a month. Right. So obviously we wish him nothing but the best. But this comes at a time where Pittsburgh's been pretty hot. They're 6-2-2 in their last 10. They've pulled themselves back into a wild card position, and without their top defenseman, the guy who's eaten up the most minutes for this team, what do you think's going to happen to Pittsburgh here over the next, let's say, 8 weeks? This could lead us into February maybe when he actually comes back.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh right now, they're treading water as far as, the standings are concerned. They're sitting in the second wild card spot behind Detroit and Tampa there. So, listen, they've got the Rangers, Florida all up on their heels. And, if you wait too long, Washington might claw their way back into this conversation too. But
not to mention Florida, the New York Rangers, who are right behind them too. And there's some teams we expected to be in the playoff conversation that have not had a good start, but this certainly could open that window just enough to allow those teams to see an opening. Yeah,
I mean, listen, I think Pittsburgh's going to do what Pittsburgh normally does when they get injured, have star players injured. They're going to play better or just keep doing what they're doing, right? Yeah. I don't think they're really going to change anything. It's just next man up because, listen, they're tied up against the cap and don't have a lot of capital, so they're going to just ride it out and see where this thing goes.
Have a lot of capital as the Capitals chase them. I guess we're going to find out what it would have been like if Chris Letang had signed in like Montreal or something like that, right? Here's our view. Well, let's dive into some of these rumors, because I think there is a chance that something pretty decently big happens here as we move into Christmas. Who do you want to start with? Who's your... I guess I'll say this. Why don't we start with the player that you think has the best chance of not just getting moved? We know there's going to be lots of players who are moved at some point, but getting moved before Christmas.
Oh, before Christmas. I honestly think that the one player, I think if anybody, Cap plays a big part of it, but I think, teams being desperate to get some offense, I think Timo Meier is going to be the first guy to get moved.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Timo Meier. And I think dating back to last year, I don't think we really had pegged him as, Timo Meier's probably going to leave. He's an RFA, so that certainly plays a factor as to why we would think that. Generally, you don't look at an RFA and go, that guy's going to want out and he's just going to leave. But I got to think that based on what their output is on the ice, that there's not going to be much of a fight from San Jose to say, no, like, we need you here, or like, you're not going anywhere, because frankly, he can sign he can go to arbitration, sign a 1-year deal, and he's a UFA the next year. And then you're right back where you are. So I think they probably have a better chance of getting better assets by dealing him now, as opposed to, when he's a UFA. At least this gives teams the opportunity not only to guarantee that you have him for 2 years, but to maybe get a contract before he's dealt, like a contract extension, or you at least have the opportunity. You've got a long runway to be able to re-sign him to a long-term deal.
Right, and that's the thing. I think teams are going to try to get a guy like Timo Meier in faster because of his qualifying offer for next year, right? At $10 million, I don't think San Jose wants to give him $10 million to play one more year. Now, they have.
Is his qualifying offer $10 million?
Yeah, it's $10 million just because of where his salary is this season. And with $16 million in cap space for next year, right, you take 10 out of that equation, so now you've got 6 to essentially put together half of your forward roster and another defenseman and potentially another goaltender on top of that. So the money's getting really thin, and I think Mike Grier and company would definitely like the flexibility of not having to give him $10 million. And I think they're obviously not going to not qualify him and let him walk for nothing.
No.
So I mean, listen, I think this is a guy who's primed to move.
I mean, almost a point per game player. He's on pace for over 30 goals again. I mean, he is exactly what a lot of these teams who are looking for that scoring from the wing, which, I mean, you look up and down the NHL and you're going to find a lot of the good teams have good centers, and it's all about then bringing in those wingers who can complement them. And Timo Meier would be a great fit, especially since he's a solid defensive contributor as well.
Yeah, he's an ideal power forward that I think every team in the league would love to have now. Are they going to give him 7 or 8 years? No, but he might get a solid $5-6 million deal out of it, and who knows, right? Maybe they might get him to that max contract and just kind of write off that last year or two as the cap goes up.
Okay, give me some potential teams that you think Timo Meier might head off to.
Honestly, I think the number one team on my list where he might end up is going to be the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay.
I look at this team right now, and they've kind of struggled as far as depth scoring is concerned. I mean, they're obviously getting a lot of scoring out of their top guys like Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho, Martin Nish. But when you move beyond really that, there's not a lot of scoring going on, right? Koken Niemi's only got 4 or 5 points this season as their second line center. They're just not getting that depth scoring right now, and I know they're all sitting around waiting. Pacioretty to come back, but there's no guarantee he's going to come back 100%, and when he's going to come back, I don't know. So, if you're Carolina, who's struggling to hold on to, that third spot in the Eastern Conference right now, in the Metro Division, why would you want to risk it when you have other teams like Pittsburgh, the Rangers that are typically playoff teams scratching at your heels? Trying to get in. Why would you? I don't see why they would want to wait really at this point when those other teams are outscoring them. And with Ranta and Anderson, their health is always a question mark.
Right. I mean, so, Anderson's on IR right now. And,
right.
As is Teuvo Teravainen, and not LTIR, but I mean, I guess the issue for me is, yes, Max Pacioretty's going to come back. There's $7 million, and there goes your cap space. So in order to fit a $6 million player under the cap that you add, that probably means somebody has to go. Or
I don't think there's much money that's going to have to go back. I think you could send a couple $1 million and make it work. And let's face it. I mean, San Jose and Carolina have been trade partners before with Brent Burns,
sure.
So it would make.
I suppose they would eat half that $3 million in cap space. That right there would obviously make it much more palatable and easier to do. But you also, you consider Freddie Anderson's going to come back. There's $4.5 million. He's not on a LTIR. If Jake Gardiner comes back too, that's $4 million. So there are some other cap considerations. But I'm with you on the fit. Like, they could really use a guy like Timo Meier. I guess my one other side note would be, do you think Carolina is willing to give him $10 million?
Well, yeah, I think they'll give him $10 million if they're willing to give Cook and Niemi 4.8 for 20 years. I think they're more than willing to give him
years. Yeah.
I think they're more than willing to give him $10 million on a 1-year deal and see how it plays out. Now, if it doesn't play out and they can't get him signed long term, again, this is a guy who I think is a valuable trade chip. And you got to remember, too, Max Pacioretty's contract's coming off the books after this season. So at 34 years old, they probably won't re-sign him unless he has just a phenomenal season and hits it off. But they've got $27 million cap space next year. So I think they'll find a way to get it done with him and keep him around for the long term.
Okay. I just, at this point, I'm looking at the Islanders consistently because of their lack of activity in the offseason. We know that, they basically brought back the same exact team plus Alexander Romanov, and they're playing pretty well. They're in the thick of things. They're second in the Metro, far behind New Jersey, but so is everyone. And they've been playing well, but I think that you would look at a guy like Timo Meier and go, oh man, Lou Lamoriello would have to be chomping at the bit to get a guy like that into the organization after everything that had happened, and the fact that he's much younger than pretty much this entire core of forwards, other than Matthew Barzal and Beauvillier, that he would be able to come in, not only maybe replace some of what you may lose as some of these guys get age out, but also for this season you add in a very competent forward who probably could fit this system pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, the way he plays that power forward game, I don't think there'd be any fit questions now. Right. And as long as as long as he's been a part of this organization, Matthew Barzal's been looking for a winger to play on his line for him, so somebody who can keep up. And I think Timo Meier would be a good fit for that. But now the question is, what are you sending back? I mean, obviously with the Islanders, it's going to take a little bit more than a first-round pick, and I suspect the San Jose Sharks would want some sort of prospect, maybe Oliver Wahlstrom, maybe one of those quality young defensemen. I don't know, Noah Dobson. But
yeah, I mean, it's going to be expensive to go and get this guy, right? Like, yeah. I think every team would be under the impression that it's going to probably cost you 3 first-round picks in some way, prospects, actual first-round picks, etc. That would be my guess for a Timo Meier. If that's what Arizona is looking for Jacob Chychrun, I imagine it's very similar for Timo Meier.
Yeah, I mean, I would venture to say you could probably do 3 pieces, right? A first-rounder, a quality prospect, and a good roster player, I think, would be okay. Maybe enough to get it done, and it depends how long San Jose wants to wait, right? The sooner in the year you trade for a player, usually the more it can cost you. But if you wait right up to the deadline, it's going to cost you even more. So I would pull the trigger now if I was Carolina or the Islanders for sure.
Or maybe one team that has not been able to keep the puck out of the net or really score has really struggled, but have come back with a vengeance in their last 10 games, 7-3 in their last 10. The St. Louis Blues, who many had already written off, although we know what they did when they won the Stanley Cup. How nicely would Timo Meier fit in St. Louis? The Blues would be an excellent fit for that power forward type of guy. He also slides in nicely. Let's say Tarasenko says bye-bye. You've got a guy who really is coming in to replace Tarasenko long-term if he doesn't re-sign.
Yeah, I mean, long-term fit, right? Meier would fit in really well there. The only problem is in the short term, how do you get him in there, right? I think there's just money that's got to go back, and who do you send? Is San Jose willing to take on Brandon Saad's contract, or maybe do you send a Pavel Buchnevich back the other way? I don't think you do. So
I don't think you want to do that.
Yeah, so it's really difficult to find the money to send back, and I don't think they have a player that they'd be willing to part with right now that's going to free up that cap space.
I mean, would you kind of, I don't want to say give up, but in a sense, kind of just allow Jake Neighbors to go in that deal? Like, that may be the player that St. Louis dangles out there, is Jake Neighbors, who struggled, in the 12 games that he's played in the NHL, and he's down in the AHL right now. He's got 5 points in 7 games, but no goals. He's somebody who a lot of people really like him coming into this year. I mean, he's drafted in 2020 in the first round, and there's one of the pieces you would need. He would probably need to be involved. Is a Jake Neighbors. You're probably talking about another a defenseman potentially that would need to go. Yeah, it's going to be tough to acquire a guy like Timo Meier in the middle of a season, especially for a team that's really good, right? Like that's always the challenge of these, is that you have to give up so much to get a player like that. But if you think it's going to help you now, which St. Louis is certainly in a win now mode. I mean, honestly, if you think you can win the cup this year, then I think you probably need to add a piece like that. Maybe not Timo Meier, but add a piece like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've probably spent enough time on Timo Meier. Unless you've got any more to say, I don't think anyone's talked about Timo Meier for this long in their life. That's not true. I'm sure his mom has. Shall we go to the Kaner Taves situation?
Let's do it.
Where do you? Okay, so there's actually been a lot more buzz around where Jonathan Taves is going to go. I think because does it feel like Patrick Kane is kind of like he's going to go to the Rangers? At least that's the vibe right now. I don't know if that's actually what's going to happen, but it seems like there's kind of just this there's no point in worrying about other rumors. He'll go to the Rangers.
Yeah, it sucks for those two guys because I feel like I'd like to see them traded now, but because of their cap hits, it's going to be very difficult to make it work right now versus closer to the deadline. So, for a guy like me with Patty Kane's, I think if the Rangers try to make a play for him now, which I mean, really, they could really use him now. They're struggling to get in. They don't got a ton of offense right now, and so Shesterkin bailed him out last year, and I think right now it's just
and he's been struggling a little bit this year.
Right. And so if you can pick up the goal scoring a little bit, that would be tremendous. And I know they've struggled to make Lafreniere and Capo Caco work on those right wings, and they've been playing Goudreau and other guys up and down that lineup, Jimmy Vesey on that right side on those first two lines to try to make things work. And it's just, I don't really think it's panning out the way, Ranger staff had thought it would. So, for me, I would pull the trigger now and give Kaner as much time as you can with one of those top two lines to find some chemistry. But
I don't know that we've seen a deal happen at Christmas time where a player is a three-way trade is done, and you get another team hanging on to their cap space, because teams want to maximize their cap space, and that happens by waiting the longest, right? Because of your accrued space and all that. That to me is probably the impossibility of a trade for Kane, is that the Rangers, I mean, outside of dumping someone with a lot of salary as well, I just don't know if it's feasible right now. Although you're right, it would be a great fit right now. However, let's put this out there. Do you think Patrick Kane, looking at the Rangers situation right now, goes, yeah, I want it, let's go to the Rangers and win a cup? As a team that's sitting outside the playoffs, do we now, after almost 25 games, do we still see the Rangers as Stanley Cup contenders?
I think with Patrick Kane, absolutely a Stanley Cup contender. Their defense, their goaltending is good enough, and I think that little boost that Kaner can give that top six would be enough for me to say, good, you know what, this is a Stanley Cup contender. As deep as they went last year in the playoffs, I think with Kaner they can go even further. And so the only question mark is, what are you giving up? So, I looked at this a little bit and really thought about it. And, I want to float this out there to you, not to kind of go off topic, but, Capo Caco, are you willing, if you're the Rangers, are you willing to give up on him and maybe send him to Chicago to try to make this deal work in a three-way trade?
Ooh, wow. That's, he's the older of the two between him and Lafreniere. I feel like you just it's so hard to give up on those guys that are first, second overall picks, to just go, you know what, they're not working out, because a few years in the league is nothing, right? Like, how many guys have spent a few years in the league and then they blow up and they have pretty good careers? Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be Connor McDavid or even a number one line top line player in the league, but maybe he develops into what I would consider to be like a Ryan Johansson, a Matt Duchene, that kind of player who absolutely makes a difference on your team, puts up big points. It might take him a little bit longer to get there, and he's an effective player. He's just not that absolute superstar. I think there's got to be some question marks about whether he could still get there.
And I think that question mark, I think he's the type of guy that needs ice time. He needs that top power play time to really develop and to produce. And, with the cast they have, that core they have locked up for the next 4 or 5 years, you're just not going to get that time in New York. And so, in Chicago, he'll get every opportunity to be a top-line guy out there. Granted, he might not have an ideal center or, line mates for a while, but that would be a good way for Chicago to start the rebuild.
Yeah, and there is the fact that the Rangers have 2 first-round picks this year too, really makes it much more palatable to part ways with one of those. They have Dallas's, so you probably are floating Dallas's before your own, because it sure looks like Dallas's first-round pick is going to be a pretty high one, and or I guess a low one. Low, high? I don't know.
A late one.
A late one. There we go. Late.
Yes.
Yeah. I wonder about the Rangers if we go another 50 games, another 25 games, and they're still sitting outside the playoffs. Are you not kind of pivoting and going, hey, Dallas, Colorado, you guys interested? Because I don't want to go and lose in the first round, or worst case, miss the playoffs. That would be terrible to go get dealt and then miss the playoffs. And, maybe if the Rangers are in a position where they're not super confident in what they have, are they willing to give up what's necessary to go get Patrick Kane when they could just not give anything up and sign him in the offseason?
Yeah, that's the question mark, right? Are you confident you'll get in with what you have now? And I'm not. I'm not 100% confident they would get in at this point, the way they've been playing. But you know what? This is a team that
seems like it's certainly possible. But
yeah, it absolutely is possible. I think it's more possible for them to get in than the way we wrote off the St. Louis Blues a few weeks ago.
Sure,
so,
sure.
I don't know. That's the big question mark. And I think Patrick Kane is probably already eyeballing the Rangers. So, it's his decision to make, and he holds all the leverage. So, if Chicago wants anything for him, they'll make a deal regardless of what it costs the Rangers or what it doesn't cost them.
Yeah, Chicago doesn't care.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't care. I'm sure they would love if the Rangers sent them their first-round pick and then they missed the playoffs. That would be fantastic. Well, okay. Let's go Jonathan Toews then. Let's go with top 3 places you think he's going to end up.
Ooh, you know what? I'll be honest with you. I did not really look at him too much as far as, where he could possibly end up. But just off the top of my head, thinking about this, I think Colorado would be one place because they are
especially losing Kadri.
Yes, they are a team that I've got a couple other centers here on the board that I think
they've got $5 million in cap space, so they could maneuver.
Yep, I think he would be a good fit. I think the Boston Bruins would be another team because they're always a team that goes in on a big fish. It seems every deadline, and I think if you can go into the playoffs with Bergeron, Krejci, and Toews as your top 3 centers, you're all set. And you got to think with Bergeron's age, Krejci's age, and possibly losing Pasta. Yeah, you want to go. This is an all-in season for the Boston Bruins,
right.
So I think that would be just another ideal place for him to go. And then after that, I look at the Dallas Stars because they're another team that I think needs a second-line player to play with Sagan and Marchment. And, again, I think Toews would fit in pretty well there because it gives you flexibility. You can still keep Sagan on the wings. You don't have to play him at center. And then he plays a great two-way game anyways. Whether or not he produces offensively as well, I don't think it can get any worse than what they've been rolling Radek Faksa in there right now and a whole string of other players.
Doesn't matter that first line scores, and they're actually getting second line production from Ben and Sagan. So they're
Ben's on the third line and he's producing a point per game. They're going to keep him there. Great. So I'll say there's one team that I think is probably a little dark horse, but based on the way that they've played thus far in the regular season, I'm looking at the Winnipeg Jets because Jonathan Toews is from Winnipeg.
be pretty cool probably to go back, maybe for just the one season to go back to Winnipeg. And man, what that extra center would look like to add Jonathan Toews to get that playoff experience in with this group, where a lot of this group has had some pretty significant playoff failures, and to bring in Jonathan Toews, who has had great success, I think could really help this group. And I think he'd fit fine, other than, of course there's the salary to deal with, but anytime we're talking about these guys, they're going to get traded to it's going to be a 3-way trade. Has to be. And nobody can fit this kind of space under their cap. Probably not even the $5 million. It's got to be $2.5 million. And at that point, you can kind of work it out. They've got $2.6 in current cap space for the deadline, and that'll only increase over the season. So I don't think it would be a problem for the Jets. But I really like the fit there in Winnipeg.
I don't hate it.
All right. Who else do you have? Who else should we jump to?
Yeah. So after that, I'd love to talk about, speaking of centers, maybe let's talk a little Bo Horvat.
Horvat?
Yeah, Horvat. I actually almost called him Horvat.
Horvat.
Glad you picked up on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's if I had to give a percentage number as to where I thought Bo Horvat was at with extending with Vancouver, I would say I'm probably at 30%. He's going to re-sign. 70%. They're going to let him walk or trade him. But I thought that was 10% a couple of weeks ago, and now Vancouver, they're 1 point out of the playoffs still, and who knows what'll happen the rest of the way. I don't know that they're consistent enough to really to push some of these teams out of the playoffs, but Bo Horvat's been there his entire career. They drafted him. My guess is that it'd be pretty tough to say goodbye. And maybe he's willing to, if they're willing to play ball with him, he'd probably be willing to stay, is my guess.
Yeah, I mean, but look, you look at the recent deals that have come up in the NHL, right? We just had Roope Hintz get signed for $8+ million. Yep. Tage Thompson,
today.
His deal, and yeah, today. And Tage Thompson's contract, Robert Thomas's contract is $7+ million. I don't think Bo Horvat's going to take much of a hometown discount to stay in Vancouver, and that's the concern to me because, yes, they've got a little bit of cap space, $13 million next season, but you got to remember, I mean, they have half of their forward group really signed. There's guys that are going to need new deals coming up, especially Elias Pettersson, a year after next, and
yep, and and the way he's playing this season, he's going to get over $10 million probably on his next deal.
Exactly. Yeah, you've got JT Miller's contract kicking in, and I know in Vancouver the name we've heard floated around a lot was Connor Garland, but if you're a team looking for help offensively, why would you not go after Bo Horvat over a guy like Connor Garland who's putting up 10 points in 22 games? So you're not getting the same type of point per game production you get out of Bo Horvat. So to me, I think if Vancouver is even just a little bit out of the playoff picture, I'm dealing him.
Isn't it though? You just signed JT Miller to a fat contract. How are you going to do that and then trade Bo Horvat? That's where I'm at. Is that if you're going all in with JT Miller, who's 29, why are you not going all in with Bo Horvat, who's 27?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think last year when you looked at the production that both these guys were giving you, I mean, JT Miller obviously had the better season at 99 points, and he's still putting up a point per game pace, which is great. I mean, he's actually got exactly the same amount of points in same games as Bo Horvat, but last year you would have expected the same amount of production probably out of Bo Horvat at 52 points, 70 games. So you're thinking, okay, good. You know what? We can get this guy probably around $6-7 million if we give JT Miller, the $8 million they did. And so,
and now he's got 17 goals in 23 games and is on pace for 50 goals.
Yeah, that's kind of backfired because I suspect that probably Bo Horvat's camp said, you know what? No, we're not going to talk about negotiations now. We want to wait, see how the season goes, and then we'll have that discussion. And so, obviously they probably bet on themselves, and it's clearly paying off because, I think, again, if Bo Horvat wants to stay in Vancouver, truly does and is willing to take a discount, maybe at $7.5 million, they could probably find a way to make this work. But if he's pushing towards $9 million for a contract
for a center,
next term,
for a center and for a young guy, I mean, obviously, in my mind, actually, yes, you've got Roope Hintz, who I think I'm taking Rupe Hintz over Bo Horvat personally, but I'm looking at what Dylan Larkin's about to get. You got to think Dylan Larkin's going to re-sign sometime here, and to me, they're very similar players. They're both the captains of their team. Neither player is necessarily a superstar, but they both mean a tremendous amount to their team. They both were drafted by their team. They both developed into like not just great hockey players, but great people in the community. I think they might be looking more at what Matthew Barzal got in New York, because Barzal's kind of right there too. Like, he's that guy who not necessarily putting up massive points, but they drafted him. They developed him. He loves living there. There's so many factors. And I mean, frankly, I know his numbers maybe were reflected by playing for Barry Trotz. And here he goes, 26 points in 24 games. Granted, it took him a while to score one goal. He's on pace for about 8 goals, but nobody ever minded that from Joe Thornton or Ryan Getzlaff. They still paid him money. So, I mean, $9.15 million for Barzal. I got to think that both Larkin and Horvat are looking at that deal going, look, it's the same thing. Center, captain, developed here. We're putting up a point per game. Let's go. Like, that's the benchmark. He signed that last year, so I want 9.2 or 9.3.
Yeah, I mean, I have no doubt Larkin's going to look between $9 and $10 million bucks. And look, Steve Yzerman is a master negotiator. He's going to try to get Dylan Larkin as cheap as possible. And but I mean, ultimately, focus back here on Bo Horvat. I think again, he's going to look for similar money as a guy like Matthew Barzal and Dylan Larkin. And so I think it's just going to be tough for Vancouver to swing that. And I do think he's going to get moved at some point. Now, where he goes is the big question, right? I've been looking at teams that could really use a guy like that I think would fit in nicely in their system and really just slide in, no questions asked, and just produce right over the top. And I looked exactly, straight. The first name that came to mind for me was the Minnesota Wild. Right now they've got Sam Steele, the reject from Anaheim, playing top line minutes at center at their first line. So
yeah,
if you can
Hartman's out, yeah.
Right, yeah. So if you can get Bo Horvat to slide in that first line center, you can slide everybody down appropriately where they belong. You get a heart and soul character guy. And to do so, all you have to do is send back a defenseman who you're probably not going to re-sign after this year in Matt Dumba, because Vancouver desperately needs some quality D-men, and maybe that's enough, for Vancouver to give Matt Dumba an extension, with some good money, probably more money than he would get this offseason. So, maybe you send him Dumba over and, a couple other pieces, a middle, second or third rounder, a prospect or something, and make that happen.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I any team that gets Bo Horvat, it's going to definitely catapult them. I mean, he's a guy I think we all wished we saw in the playoffs more often. The last time he was in the playoffs, 2019-20, and he had 10 goals in 17 games. He was electric in the playoffs. He's only made the playoffs in the NHL twice. And so, I mean, I just think he's that kind of guy that you want to see in the playoffs. So I for one, hope that he gets dealt or the Canucks make the playoffs, one of the two, because I think that he certainly deserves the shot at a cup and should be playing in the playoffs the way that he plays. Should we go to Chychrun?
Let's go to Chychrun.
No defenseman yet, so let's go to Chychrun. I know it's kind of been the obvious pick since Morgan Rielly goes down, Jake Muzzin's out. He's got a pretty team friendly deal. Toronto Maple Leafs have certainly put in feelers for Jakob Chychrun. I know they want basically 3 first-round picks. However, that goes out, whether that's prospects or actual first-round picks, which the Leafs do have. What do you think about the Leafs going out and getting Chychrun?
I mean, no team's going to be foolish to not make a play for a guy like Chychrun, right? But to me, I think the wiser play might be, and when I say wiser, I mean cheaper cost-wise, right? And it really depends, right? Is Kyle Dubas, and Sheldon Keefe saying, we have to go all in this season because we're probably going to get the axe if we don't get past the first round, then you can dump your first round, second round pick, a good prospect, and go out and get a guy like Chychrun. But for me, I actually was looking at a guy like Shane Gostisbehere out of Arizona. I think you could probably send a guy like Connor Timmins back, another prospect, and maybe a future first rounder.
I don't know if they'd want Connor Timmins back, but maybe.
Well, yeah, I don't know. But still, hey, I think it might only take two pieces to get Shane Gostisbehere, because he doesn't play a big defensive, all-around game. He's so offensively talented that I think, Toronto would welcome that. And, he could definitely slide in that first power play unit where, Riley's out right now and, filling quite nicely. And if anything, give them a little bit more depth on the blue line anyways.
And with him being a UFA, you can wash your hands of that deal after this year. You're not tied up, 4.6 in Jacob Chychrun, which is a great number for Jacob Chychrun. But if Muzzin comes back next year, you're going to have a little bit of a logjam in there. So it might make more sense to bring back someone who's not going to come back next year.
Right. And again, too, like you said, I think, again, Toronto would be, foolish not to go after one of these guys. But, as far as Chychrun's concerned, I think there's going to be, a dozen plus teams, making inquiries and really having serious consideration for a guy like this. But to me, I actually looked towards the LA Kings when I thought about Jacob Chychrun's name, because I think this is a team. We just talked about it earlier. Cal Peterson's on waivers. They're struggling to keep the puck out of the net, and I think they could use a guy who brings a more steady defensive game, but also can produce offensively. And LA could really use a guy like that on the left side, because their left side is very, very weak over in LA. They've got a lot of right-handed guys that play the puck well. So to get a left-hander in there to maybe play with, Drew Doughty or Sean Dursey, who knows, would probably work out pretty well. But I think you could send Matt Roy back, who's still a good defenseman. Mm-hmm. So that would be a really interesting piece for Arizona to take advantage of. And he's only 27, so he's right in the prime of his career. And
maybe they would be willing to take Cal Peterson. Maybe,
but probably not, because they could just snag him for free right now if they want. So,
well, that's true. But then salary could be held on.
Yeah, or maybe you could even send in a guy like Alex Iafallo, who's, again, a quality top six guy, for this LA Kings team. But LA has seemed to be, they've been doing pretty dang good without him right now. So, or maybe you even dangle another guy like, Gabe Velarde out there if you want to, too, if you really are that desperate, because that's, again, a guy at 23 years old who's 18 points in 24 games, and he's an RFA. So you have all the leverage there. I think that would, just entice, Arizona like none other. So.
Sure. Yeah, I think obviously Ottawa, that name has been knocked around a lot when it comes to Jacob Chychrun. We all know the defensive woes of the Ottawa Senators. They have struggled mightily this year. And I mean, he'd be a good fit there. And they could fit his salary in. It would be, in a lot of ways, it's a good fit. And they certainly have the prospects to give it up for him. But it seems like we've been hearing that for a long time. And at this point, you got to wonder, why has Ottawa not pulled this trigger yet? If they were in it so deep and they really wanted Chychrun, why would they not have done it by now? And that's what makes me wonder, Ottawa must be looking at this going, well, we're about to sell our team and we're having a really bad season. We're not going to go and bring in $4.6 extra million into a team when we're about to sell them. We're just going to stand pat and let the season ride. Someone will buy us, and then it's their call as to what they want to do. And I think that may be where the Senators are at right now.
Yeah, I would agree with you, because again, if you're trying to, squeeze as much money out of this as, an owner is, where you're trying to get as much, much for your investment, they don't want any further long-term deals on the books when you're trying to sell it.
Right.
You've already got Tim Stützle's new contract kicking in next season. You've got Brady Tkachuk.
You brought in Giroux. You're going to have to re-sign Alex DeBrincat to a pretty big deal if you want to bring him back. Yeah.
Yeah. So, again, I don't think they want to commit any more money than they have to for futures. And so, I'm with you. I think they'll wait till the offseason and a sale is more solidified, I guess.
Yep, absolutely. Let's go one more player. Who else do you have that you want to toss out there before we sign off?
Okay, kind of a dark horse player that I think not a lot of people are looking at because of another player on his team that we've already talked about, but Andrei Kuzmenko.
Oh, Andrei Kuzmenko, yes.
Yeah, from Vancouver. I think he's a guy, again, at a point per game right now. He's going to be another guy that I don't think Vancouver can afford to re-sign after this season. They brought him in on a flyer, hoping he would pay off. And
damn me for dropping him in fantasy.
Right. Yeah,
I did pick him in the draft, and I was like, I don't know. I'll drop him and pick up someone else. And
yeah, only 21 points in 22 games.
Which, by the way, you beat me by like 4 points this week, and really...
Which was stunning because I was up by like 60 or 80 points a couple with like 2 days left.
You were up by like 100 points.
Yeah. And you made a nice little push.
Yeah, I had 4 players with over 50 points in the week, which is crazy. I looked, and I think I had 4 players that scored higher than your highest scoring player. It's just, I mean, obviously you had more consistency throughout the lineup, but I think that you may have had something to do with that water main break in Nashville. Because I straight up lost because of that. 100%. I lost my start because I left in Georgiev.
Okay.
And I didn't. I mean, the game was at 2 p.m. I set my roster the night before, and then I think it was like 3. I went and checked, like, hey, I'm going to go check on the goalies, and I just, I forgot to come in earlier. That's my bad. But I wasn't expecting a water main break in the arena to cancel a game. So then Georgiev, I could take him out of the lineup. Another 2:00 game had already started, and Darcy Kemper went and got 29 points on my bench. So, yeah, and there was one other situation like that with a forward, and the one forward I would have put in got 9.5 points. So I missed out on 40 points.
Yeah, and the sad part is I wasn't even paying attention that last Sunday to make any further moves too, because I was just like, I've got him beat. Dude, there's no chance he's coming back.
I thought the same thing. I was like, there's no point in like trying to drop a couple guys and like adding a few players here. I'm so far back. There's no way. That freaking 4 points away. I was watching it and was like, holy shit, am I going to win? I came within 4 points.
Yep.
Now I'm 2-4. Fortunately, the top team in my division is 3-3. Whereas your division, there's 3 teams at 5-1 and 1 at 4-2.
I know, it's crazy.
So it's a very unbalanced divisions here. So all I have to do is really I can come back in a couple weeks. I could be top of my division, sitting here at 2-4.
Yeah, and it's set up the top teams in each division get an automatic bid. So
yep, that's what I got to go for. So
sounds good to me.
But yeah, that's wait. Oh yeah, Kuzmenko. That's how we got onto the fantasy thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to railroad your Kuzmenko pick. I mean, yeah, at a point per game, do you think Kuzmenko more than just a first round pick for this guy?
I do. Yeah, I really do. I think he's going to be a guy that a lot of teams are going to look to squeeze in their top 6 at some point. Like I said earlier, with Jonathan Toews maybe in Dallas, I think Dallas would be another team that's really going to look at this guy because look at his cap hit, right? That's why I think he's going to get more than a first rounder. If you can add a point per game guy for less than $1 million, I mean, there's going to be so many teams knocking on the door to get this guy.
Yep, so many teams. Yeah. He may be the most bang for your buck acquisition that you could get at the deadline if Vancouver is not in the picture.
And
sure.
there's plenty of teams that are going to start making calls. I mean, even if Vancouver starts falling out in the next 10 to 15 games, I could see teams like Florida, Carolina,
sure.
Dallas, maybe even the Maple Leafs, might make an inquiry about this guy.
I mean, that's probably the one forward for the Leafs that you could go, that would actually make sense because the Leafs could do that. That's the beauty of Kuzmenko and why it's such a great player to bring up because he really can go anywhere. There isn't a team that can't fit a guy for $950,000 under their cap.
Exactly. And he's so offensively talented, and at 26 years old, his IQ's, I mean, he's got a really good hockey IQ. So I think this guy could slide in and play with guys like Matthews or Tavares without missing a beat.
Love it. All right. Well, that's our pre-Christmas trade rumors. As we get closer to Christmas, I know we'll be still looking at a lot of this. We'll continue talking hockey as we get closer and closer to that first little deadline in the season, and we'll be here for all of it. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Justin, any final thoughts before we log off?
I love you.
I love you too, and we love our listeners. We'll talk to you guys very soon. Have a good one.